You old dirty rat?
Rats. These furry pests have had an important impact in history. There are about 7 billion rats consisting of more than 60 species that live in the world today. About one for every human. They have gone everywhere in the world, mostly coming from Asia. Rats are active little buggers, mating as much as 20 times a day. They have about 6 litters a year, and each litter includes about 8 to 10 rat babies, but sometimes as many as 20, and they all live about 2 years. Rats first came to England from Asia about 2,000 or so years ago on Saxon ships. These pests quickly spread and settled across the entire European continent. London became a popular place for rats to reside in because it was a more developed area and it had great shelter, warmth, and an abundance of food scraps. Over the centuries, the rat population steadily grew, and they continued to secretly board ships from Asia and arrive in Europe. The Black Death, also known as the pestilence, the Great Mortality, and the Plague was a bubonic plague pandemic occurring in Western Eurasia and North Africa. It was the most fatal pandemic recorded in human history, causing the deaths of between 75 and 200 million people. It peaked in Europe from 1347 to 1351. There is no doubt that rodents can really spread some nasty diseases, including the plague. Were they the cause of the outbreak? Due to the poor living conditions for lower classes in this period, rats and other rodent infestations were pretty common. The rat population was probably high and extremely widespread during this time. Hygiene practices were not great and might have led to an abundance of fleas and lice. Rodents may have carried the plague and infested the streets and homes, but fleas were the actual cause of most people's infections. As the fleas feasted on rats, they would ingest the bacteria that caused the plague. Once the fleas bit an unsuspecting human, they too could be infected. Rats and people made their way to Hawaii. First on Tonga, then Samoa, then the Society Islands, and finally Easter Island and Hawaii. People first arrived in this area 3,000 years ago. Reaching these islands took a lot of energy. During these long boat trips, people needed their sustenance. Since there was no convenience stores on the way, ancient seafarers brought live rats to snack on. This was the Pacific rat. Rats that survived the journey went on with the people to spread and populate island after island. The 1700s were a time of vast exploration, colonization, and trade, most of it carried out by ships. The nooks and crannies of these ships were often inhabited by rats who burrowed into cargo boxes. Whenever a ship docked and unloaded, these pests would disembark and find themselves in a brand new world in which they would infest. I wonder if rats followed the rule on Noah's Ark. Only one male and one female rat. Rats have left behind clues and artifacts of the colonial era. Not only of themselves, but of the people that lived in the area as well. One good example comes from the Oral House at Colonial Williamsburg. The Oral House is said to be haunted and now can be rented as a place to lodge in Colonial Williamsburg. A family of rats built a nest behind a staircase in the building. When the rats moved in, they lined their nest with objects from the Oral's house human residents. That rat nest remained hidden from everyone until January 2021. That's when a historical team opened the staircase and found a trove. Could the spirits of rats from long ago be the ones haunting the Oral House? No. At the Bray School, a building that became a school for black children, was found to have even more rats. Rats in the walls, rats by the chimney, rats in the roof beams. Many artifacts from the building were found in these nests. In the late 1800s and the early 1900s, colonists in Hanoi decided to equip the town with toilets. This meant creating a sewer system capable of carrying waste away. While it did just that, the sewer system became home to many rats who were seen emerging from the drains like a scene from a nightmare. The sewer system created a dark, cool rodent paradise where they could breed without fear from the predators. The problem became so desperate, French colonists wanted to keep the number of plague outbreaks down. They hired rat hunters. The rat hunters were paid for every tail that they brought in. They accumulated about 4,000 a day. On one great day of hunting, they had 20,000 rats killed. Unfortunately for the ones paying the bill, it was discovered that the rat hunters were simply chopping the tails off of live rats to let them keep breeding so more tails could be chopped off to ensure long-lasting profits. Those cheaters. Taft, California is a notorious place for the largest mouse infestation in American history. In 1924, the Fish and Wildlife Service launched an ill-fated program to eliminate hawks, coyotes, and other predators from the county. Well, what they didn't realize was that the predators kept the mouse population from becoming a major issue. Once eliminated, the mouse were able to breed without obstruction and did so at an alarming rate. Now, the surrounding area of the town was ripe with crops and featured a lake which served as a natural water resource. Perfect place for mice to breed and eat. Unfortunately, by November of that year, the harvest would have been completed and the food would have been more scarce for a large population of rodents. Now wait for it, here it comes. Later that month, a rainstorm hit the town and caused the lake to flood, triggering a mass exodus of mice from the area. Where did they scurry to? You got it, straight into the town of Taft. Eyewitnesses stated that literally waves of rodents scampered across the fields, eating everything in their path. Town folks dug trenches filled with poison, but by that time the population was so high they weren't even making a dent in it. When the army of mice reached Taft, the population might have been as high as 50 million. They were so hungry they supposedly even ate a live sheep in its pen. The situation was so bad they hired a man named Stanley Piper. Yes, you heard that right, Stanley Piper. But by that time, the population had reached 100 million mice. Right as Mr. Piper's plan to destroy the mice breeding grounds were set to begin, a miracle happened. Birds suddenly arrived from the skies and began feasting on the mice. By February, another rainstorm and flood had finally ended the largest infestation of mice in U.S. history. So that's a lesson for all of us. We better think twice before eliminating predators of mice in the future. Everyone thinks of New York City as the rat capital of the world. Rats as big as dogs, right? Sadly, it wasn't even on the recent top 5 list according to Point Pest Control.
Get out of here!
The cities with the most rats: Chicago, number 1.
Rats.
LA, 2.
Rats.
London, 3.
Rats.
Paris, 4.
Rats.
And Deshnok, India, number 5.
Rats! Rats!
Well, rats have been a little thought of part in history. Their impact has been felt over many thousands of years. It will continue to be felt as time itself. That is strange indeed. We'll keep the videos scurrying along here in Strange History. Check out our video on the Salem witch trials. You will hang on our every word.